Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Zach. Here we talk about overlanding and tech. I bet you're here because your 2019 Toyota 4Runner has the head unit from like a 2005 Honda Civic. I bet you're not happy about that. Well, I was in your exact same shoes and I was looking for a head unit that had Apple CarPlay and a bunch of other bells and whistles that come every day in your normal vehicle, but for some reason, they don't come in the Toyota 4Runners up until you buy a 2020. I have been shopping these head units for a long time. I looked at the T9, the T10, I think even the T8 head units that a lot of people have reviewed on YouTube. I looked at trying to retrofit the 2020 and the 2021 4Runner head units back to an older model because the dash is sort of similar. And I just couldn't find anything that had really great reviews. And I figured, well, this had the best reviews of them all, and I wanted to test it for myself because everyone's reviewing everything these days, and so YouTube videos tend to be my go-to for reviewing products. So I reached out to Dasaita and they sent me this one, and I'm really stoked because I'm gonna be able to show you every single thing you have to do in order to get this installed in your vehicle. Basically, I've heard that some of the other Android head units on the market aren't very responsive, or they just don't feel that nice. But after setting this one up, it's incredible. Like, the responsiveness on the screen is twice as good as any of the 2014 to 2019 touchscreen head units. This unit is incredibly customizable and I just love everything about it. It makes the head unit display look basically like a Range Rover, which they have a pretty wide, flat display. I was thinking that this screen wasn't gonna be super proportional, let's just say. I was thinking it was going to be kind of flat and look a little awkward, but that is not the case. It just looks phenomenal. It looks like two of your typical stock screens side by side. It's great height, great width, and with the black plastic, it looks exactly like the rest of the interior of my vehicle. So I just love how OEM it looks. But you get so much added functionality. There's so much you can customize. I added a front-facing camera. We're gonna be talking through how to do that. So with all that being said, if you like this video or you like my channel, please consider subscribing, liking the video, turning on the notification bell, etc., because it really helps me grow and I can make more videos like this. So buckle up. I know this video is a little bit long, but it's because I'm going in a very in-depth, step-by-step setup for putting this unit in your vehicle. I haven't seen a lot of places online that go in this much detail, and this is purposefully that way so that hopefully I can help you with the install process and you don't end up having any sort of headache. So let's jump right in. Okay, so we're in the 4Runner and I've got this flathead screwdriver, which is I think basically all we're gonna need to remove this whole thing from the dash until we get to the sockets. So you're gonna need a flathead to remove all of the clips, and then you're gonna need a 10mm or a 12mm socket depending upon which bolts we're going to remove. Okay, so I've got all my tools here. What we're gonna first start by doing is taking off these two knobs, and they just screw on like any sort of cap. So just remove both of those and just set those aside. The plastic around where your shifter and your four-wheel drive change is all just held in with clips. I recommend grabbing towards the center console, but just grab there and pull up and it'll pop out. Just be strategic on how you pull this out because you are going to need to unplug a clip. This is the clip you need to unplug. Just press down on this and pull it out. All right, so we just pinched that clip. We got out this plastic and just set that aside as well. Okay, next, now that we've moved out that piece of plastic, it just provides extra space. Now what you're gonna do is grab this towards the top, right by where these knobs are, and just pull on them. Now, all you're gonna do is you're gonna pull that away far enough so there's gonna be a clip right here, and then there's gonna be a clip right there. Okay, so what we do is we pinch this one and it's gonna drop out of there. So let's do that. So you see these sides are you just clip them in. You can push them in with a pliers or you could use a flathead. And then this right here, just pull out like that. Super straightforward. And now this thing you can completely remove as well. Next, we need to remove these 4 bolts. So this is where you're gonna grab your socket wrench. And if you have an extension, that will help. This long 10mm that I have, it'll work on the 2 sides. But those deep ones, you're gonna need a little extension. So let's quick grab that extension. All right, so I just swapped out it for an extension and a small socket attachment at the end. Again, this is gonna be a 10mm, so let's remove those. All right, now once we start removing these bolts, we're just gonna place them in one of the cup holders in this plastic. You can put it wherever you like, but I find that that's very easy. Now this is just held in with clips, so just be gentle with it, but you just gotta pull the clips out, and then it will slide out kind of slow because the air vents are slipped into there. So now all we're gonna do is rest this somewhere so we can unplug everything. Doesn't really matter what order you unplug anything in. And you really don't have to keep track of anything here because all of this has a different type of plug. So when we go to plug everything back in, it will be fairly simple on the new head unit. Oh, interesting. This must be a little splitter. I'm not sure what this is for, but mine's loose. So I'm gonna set this aside in one of those cup holders. And now this should be almost entirely free. Looks like we have this little, oh, this just must be a little mounting bracket for some wires or something. Piece of tape caught on it. Let's just grab that out. And now our head unit is completely loose. So what we have to do is we have to take some stuff off of this. Like I want to keep my dash mount, obviously. And then these vents, I believe, will go into the new head unit. So let's carry this inside and we're gonna swap those parts onto the new head unit. So this is the box that they ship the head unit in, and let's just open it up and see everything that comes in it. So we've got a user manual here, and then we've got a ton of different cables. Set those to the side. And then looks like we've got just a really large wiring harness as well for all of the things we're going to plug in. We got 2 different knobs here, and then the screen, Dasaita right there in the middle. And I got the black plastic version because the TRD Pros and the TRD Off-Road Premiums have black plastic dashes. So this was important for me to get. Now, if we spin this around, so if we look at the back of this, I think what we're basically gonna have to do is plug in a variety of different modules and conversion plugs. All of these white plugs here are basically splitters for different plugins in the actual 4Runner. These are the 2 big packages that just have a bunch of cables in them. Oh, they are all labeled, so there's all kinds of different harnesses here. We've got so many different options. I'm guessing this would be an awesome head unit if you were trying to retrofit like a subwoofer or something. So let's grab the other head unit and let's start disassembling everything that's on there so that we can transfer it over to this. So here's one thing I would recommend. Just grab your favorite sharper knife and carve out, like in the top of this plastic here, we're just gonna cut out like, you know, roughly that much, and then let's go like about 1 inch deep, like that. And we're gonna remove a little side portion of this plastic. Now, I'm not doing this because you have to, but I think it's gonna be really handy because we need a place to set the head unit, and I want it to be on a padded surface, and it's got those wide dials. So this is gonna allow us to have a nice place to put the head unit for assembling everything. So I'm gonna do everything the same on both sides and just take that off of there. There we go. If you look at the front of the head unit, you've got this dial here and this dial here. Those are gonna straddle on this piece So now we've got a flat place to lay the head unit and screw everything in, and we don't need to worry about anything getting damaged because this foam is really nice and cushiony. So I'd recommend doing that. It'll just make your life easier when you're transferring stuff from one to the other. And honestly, I might use the other piece to put my other head unit right in here. So I'm gonna actually cut this one out to fit the 4Runner head unit that's stock now. All right, so that did work. Mine's gonna be weighted slightly different than yours though, because I have the Rago Fabrication dash mount on the top of mine. But either way, you know, if you cut it out, it might be a helpful thing for you to have so that you can remove everything out of here and transfer it over to the new head unit. So what's looking most approachable right now is removing the hazard button harness that's attached to this whole mounting system. So there's these brackets that are mounted onto the head unit, and we're gonna remove those. So it looks like it's just these 3 bolts on this side, and then on this side, it's another 3 bolts. One right there, one right here, and one. And then on this side, there's another 3 bolts. One right here, one under this, and another right under there. So let's go ahead and remove those bolts now. So what I found is it's either a 5/16 or it's an 8mm, but the 5/16 feels just slightly tighter than, I don't know, they're honestly about equal. So I'm just gonna go ahead. They are not tightened down very much. So this side, these bolts are a little bit hard to get at. You see right in here, let's see if I can do it with 2 hands here. Right under this plastic piece is this little clip. You can get in there with pliers or a needle nose and unclip that. Now, that doesn't give us a ton of room, but it's gonna give us more room so that we can basically move this out of the way to get at these 2 other bolts right there and here. So there should be 6 bolts in total that you remove, and then this lower portion should just come right off. Okay, so if we look a little closer here, you see this little 3 silver dots. Those are little like bumps that stick into the metal and help to secure that in place. So we're gonna actually have to take off all 5 of these bolts. So time to remove those. Oh, I lied. If you just remove 2, then it gives it enough wiggle room to remove it. So this is what I was talking about earlier. As you can see, it's got these little bumps right here. These 3 that help line it up. We're only gonna be using these top 2, and then these 2 holes are where bolts are gonna go. So if you look at the side of the new head unit here, bolt and bolt, and there's threads in there. And then this hole and this hole right here, those are just gonna be those guide holes. So it's pretty easy to line up, honestly. And then I'm gonna just put in a couple bolts just to hold it in place. I'm not gonna tighten them down, but just get them started. So finger tighten them. You're not gonna keep this module because it just doesn't fit. So I'm gonna take out the other 2 bolts on this side right here and right here. Okay, so one thing that's worrying me a little bit is there's some screws that are in here that seem to be kind of getting in the way. Like when I tighten this down, it makes these mounting points push this way just slightly. So I don't know, I think it's gonna be okay. And I'm not too worried, but I am a little bit concerned as to how sloppy that will be. And I do wonder if you're just gonna basically bend these into place. I presume that's gonna be the case, but it does just concern me a little bit. We can adjust that later if we need to. So now we can just pick the next thing that we wanna remove. These 2 clips right here, they're both gonna need to be removed.
We're just going to use a small Phillips screwdriver. So I wouldn't use a power drill on something like this because you're very likely to strip out the screw. So let's just remove these quick. Okay, so I removed them and I made sure to just keep the screws exactly where they were because the holes are the exact same on here. So I moved the left one to this left spot. And so now just got to tighten them all down. It's going to be the same thing on the other side. All right, so got both of those mounted. Let's move this out of the way and pick the next thing. On the Dasaita head unit, these little gold clips aren't on there. We're going to have to borrow them. So just get 2 flatheads on either side and you can kind of unhook them. And be careful because they do tend to fly. Okay, so now I think we can remove the air vents. So I believe the screws we care about is this one right here. And then there's 2 right on the inside of here. So we've got one right there. We've got one right up there. So let's take out those screws on this side and then they have identical ones on this side and get the air unit out because then I think it'll be really easy to get at this in the middle. If you can't see the 2 tiny screws on both sides, you may need to adjust this inside portion of the fan. So when it's fully open, it seems as though I can actually get at this screw. Okay, well, this plastic piece comes out of the top right in there. And then each one of these is held in with a ton of plastic clips. So I think what you're gonna have to do is you're just gonna have to be very patient and unclip them all. So like here's one right here. I think there's one on the side right here as well. So just slowly go around and unclip everything. Now that we've got that black piece out of here though, this button is really easy to remove. You just clip it down right there and then it pops out. Just like that. So just press that button right on the top. That easy. Since I popped this out so easily, I figured I'd just quick jump over to this head unit and click it in. So very simple, not hard to do. Okay, sorry I was blocking the view there, but basically I want to show where all these clips are. So they clip here, here, right here, on this corner as well. When you flip it over, there's also a clip right here in the middle and on both ends. So 7 clips. That's a lot of clips, but what I found was if you start on the outside where you have a lot of area to be able to get at it, you can start these 2 and be pulling on it, but very gently so you don't break anything. And then you can get this clip and then the top one and slowly work your way out. So I found that to work pretty well. And I guess now we know you don't need to remove these 2 screws right away, but you can if you want to. You can get at them the way that I did. This is just, these 2 screws are what hold in this little plastic piece, which is going to show you whether your vents are opened or closed. There we go. That was much easier the second time. Do it that way that I just described. It will be so much quicker. Also, if you're curious as to whether I decided to mount up my Rago Fabrication dash mount, I decided not to because this has a different plastic layout than the other one. The sides are measured a little bit differently, and so I don't want to do something stupid on this that's just I'm going to regret. So I'm going to install that the right way in the vehicle with it mounted up. So let's just get these vents clipped back in and we should be good to go. This is also a silly thing, but make sure that you put the right little label clip on the right side, because if you switch them up, I think they're the same if you do the flipped version. So make sure that when you put this in and you turn it to the open, that it's going to point to the actual open on your plastic. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm going to put in these little plastic pieces before I clip in the vents because that'll save me some time. Also, make sure to remove that plastic or else you're going to be pretty annoyed if you've got to remove that clipped plastic in there. Just be careful not to over tighten these because they just have plastic threads. All right, so that should be all good to go. I'm going to actually clip this back in and clip it into the hazard because, as you could see at the beginning of the video, I had a little bit of a difficult time getting down into there, so that'll save me some headache. Make sure you have the 2 clips on the bottom and the 1 big clip on the top. So this one goes on this side. I'm just gonna line it up with all the clips. There's also a little hole at the top you have to line it up with. And I'm trying not to press too hard because I don't want to put a ton of pressure on that screen. Take the other fan, kind of sneak it by this cable, and okay, just do a sanity check here. When I push these down both to closed, they're both closed. Okay. I was worried about messing that up. I think we've got basically everything squared away. The only thing left to do is to put this little black piece back in here the way that it was. So, all right, so let's put this in here. As you can see, there's like a little tray right here. That's gonna go inside of there. So just line everything up and slide it into place. There we go. Now, if you remembered, we removed 2 slightly longer screws than the ones that were on the sides. And those are the 2 that we're gonna use to anchor down this top portion. And again, these screws are going into plastic, so ideally they land in the same threads as beforehand, but just make sure to screw them in firmly so that you're not stripping the head of the screw as you screw them in. I think we are ready. Now we can take this out and we can start hooking up all of the wires, and this should be all good to go. So if you've made it this far, I think the hard part's done. Now we're just gonna have to plug in everything and wire up that front-facing camera as well.
Okay, so I did do a test fit of this just quickly. I pressed it in and made sure that the mounting brackets would actually work. Remember how they were kind of sticking out a little bit at my desk? They are gonna work just fine. So I just wanted to confirm that. Now, what I'm gonna just do is quick run you through the major harnesses that are included. So we've got this big mess here. This is for the 2014 to 2019 4Runner year. If you wanna put this in a 2010 to 2013, you're gonna need an additional harness. So contact customer support for that. We've got another one right here. This is gonna plug into one of the auxiliary plugs on the radio. This just has 2 USB ports. I think it might just be for charging, but I'm not quite sure. Might be data transfer as well. We've got another one that's very similar to the last harness. This one is, it says on it that it's an RCA cable. So I believe this is for like if you wanna plug in some sort of video source to play through the screen, kind of like a portable DVD player. So that's what this is for. Then we have this plug-in here. This appears to be either a camera plug-in, or you can use it as a red, white, and yellow video plug-in. So if you've got like a, I don't know, maybe a Nintendo Switch or a Wii or some of those things I know run on yellow, white, and red. I think you got to get adapters for like other video gaming systems or Blu-ray players, but you could use that for that. And then lastly, we have this big bundle, and this is if you want to run a speaker system off of these RCA plugs. So that's everything that's included. There's a couple of different plugs. So there's this cable here, and this on the actual top of it will show what it is. This one reads GPS. So the one with the longer cable is GPS. There's a little stubby antenna. That is for the Wi-Fi. And then this right here is a microphone plug-in. Now this I think is actually important because I think some people have experienced muffled audio, so I'm gonna definitely run this and probably stick it on the plastic next to the seat or something, just so that it can hear me a little bit better if I'm using any of the phone controls.
now next thing we want to do is I've pulled all of the plugs out from the dash, and I've got the head unit right here. And so what I did is I kind of have gotten into this groove where I cut up that packing from the packaging. And so what I did is, if you can see, I cut it up to fit around these big screws that come out of the transmission and then your four-wheel drive shifter. And it wasn't quite tall enough, so you could add a rag, or I have this pack of masks just to put on top of it, because since we're using this harness, we have a little extra length. And so now, if you look, we have this little area that we can just set the head unit on, and it should be really handy for plugging everything in. Okay, so let's just start out with the main harness. And if we look at this main harness, we've got this black plug-in. This is where it's gonna actually plug into the head unit. So let's plug that in. We have this huge mess of wires, and we're gonna just have to slowly sort through it. So I recommend trying to set aside anything you can, but goodness sakes. Okay, so every plug has a different plug. There isn't a single one that's identical. If you look in, all of the pins are slightly different. So basically what we just need to do is go through them all and plug each one in. This one right here should be for, if you can see, it's got these kind of interesting coaxial plugs. And let's look around. I think this is for the antenna. Yep. So line up the plugs accordingly. There we go. All right, let's pick another one. I'm gonna try and push the ones we're done with down. Okay, this one here, we've got like really wide plugs, so I presume that's gonna plug into this one. So let's plug that one in. Next, this is our ground cable. Let's just lay that aside. I guess we could have attached that to one of these screws on the sides where the brackets are. That would be the smart thing to do. That's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna back out a screw and we're gonna just attach that right here. Let's just set these little wires aside. What does it say on here? Key 1 and key 2. Maybe that's for a push to start model. This is for an amp. Oh, it's got a little amp switch line. So this is where you would attach probably a subwoofer amp switch. So a lot of subwoofer amps, you run power from the battery, but they're turned off until it gets a trigger from your amp. That's what this wire probably is. All right, this one is very similar to the last plug-in. It's got these wide terminals. So let's look in some of these. Here we go. This clip has wide terminals, so let's plug it in. Some of these plugs we're not going to end up using because they were used in that smaller. So I think this one plugs into there, and then this one plugs into there, just like that. There is another harness somewhere that may plug into this. This one right here, this little plug, this plugs into this. This one I think will run the clock. I'm not quite sure. Oh no, sorry, this runs the hazard lights. So that will plug in right here. This is for the antenna. So make sure you take this from your old wiring and run it over and plug it into this antenna port on the other side of the radio. There's a little HDMI plug in here if you need that. Not quite sure where the best place is to put this GPS cable. I think that there's probably a number of places. I would presume the higher the better. But for now, I'm just gonna attach it and have it just lay in there, because you definitely want it. You want to have your antenna connected, but location of antenna is less important than connecting the antenna, itself. So let's just grab that and lay that on top of the radio for now. This little module, I'm gonna lay that on top of there as well. And I'm just gonna try and get some of these cables to lay halfway decently so that we can clip this in and just turn the car on and test it. Okay, so there was this gray cable
that came out, and there was this little USB adapter thing that came with it, and the adapter basically fit it perfectly. So I think what this might be is you might be able to plug into your car's data through this cable. So I presume you want to use either this RCA cable B-line adapter for that, or one of these other just miscellaneous USB cables. I'm gonna just take the time to loosen up one of these side bolts and stick the ground in there. Okay, so I pushed this up just out of the way so that I can get down here because I'm running the cable for the microphone. But so we've got the cable right here. I ran it, I'm gonna run it behind here, down under along this plastic here, and then stick it to the side of the head unit. So I'm just gonna stick it like right here. So in order to run this cable behind this area in the dash, I'm gonna tuck it down in this corner. You gotta take out these two screws. So I've removed one, and it's just a 10 millimeter, like most things on the interior of the 4Runner. So we'll just remove both of those screws, and then this should pop out. I believe it's those two screws and then some clips. There we go. So now that I got the head unit pulled back out again, I'm just gonna run this microphone cable up to the microphone port, which is just right next to all the little black auxiliary plugins. All right, got that plugged in. Now, I think basically everything is good to go. The only thing left we're gonna have to do is plug in the front-facing camera. Okay, so I have the front-facing camera right here. Basically, one side is the camera, and it's got like a threaded stem so that you can basically mount it in some location. There's a couple of different inserts depending upon the angle that you want it to be at. And then the other end of this wire has just a plug-in like this. So it's just a little cable that is designed for this actual kit. So the great thing about this head unit is it comes with this large RCA adapter. And there's a bunch of plugs here for speakers, but there's also one that's called F-Cam, which is for front-facing camera. And then it has a F-Cam power, and this is basically a triggering power. And so with this front-facing camera kit, it comes with this really long wire that on one end has a yellow RCA plug and then a little trigger wire. And so basically I've stripped both of these wires and I'm going to connect them. So follow safe electrical practices, whether you solder this or whatever. I'm going to use one of these little tube connectors because it's just easy. So you can buy these little things from Amazon. You put them in each end. So you thread it into both ends and then you hit it with heat. And the nice thing is this little kit comes with a little bit of electrical tape too, so I'm going to use this just to kind of seal up the deal. There we go. Okay, so we just put the electrical tape around that little connector. That should be all good to go. I'm going to put a piece of electrical tape around this RCA plug as well, just so that it doesn't come unplugged. There we go. Okay, so those two are plugged in. Now we can plug this in to the back of the radio. Now, when you're looking at the back of the radio, it's going to be the top left one. I just want to show right here, this is the big wiring harness. You've got these two wires connected, and then I ran the wire down right through there. So I just want to give a little update. That wire that's looping up high, that is the wire for the camera. I ran it all along under this side, and then I just have it bunched up right here. I'm gonna put it somewhere safer in the next month or so, probably, when I finish my electrical system for the 4Runner, but just put this somewhere safe so it's not gonna be in the way or cause any issues. But basically now what I want to do is I'm gonna put the camera right under this bull bar, like right here. And I want to make sure that this bull bar is not going to get in the way of the picture. So you're going to have to make your decision based on your vehicle. Another place you could put it would be like right up here. I'm not quite sure which is the better option. I'm going to tape the camera in place and try it out in the vehicle.
So make sure that when you're setting this up for a front camera, you don't like wire it into place and test it and drill your hole and everything. Make sure everything works before you're gonna actually put it into place. If I was being really smart, I would have just plugged it into the back of the head unit and then tested it, but I ran it through the firewall and then wired it up to the battery. And so now we're here, basically plugged it in. You have to cut the green wire in this model, but just check your directions if you want to remove the guidelines on this camera. So I just did that. I sealed the ends with electrical tape, and then I'm gonna tape this whole thing. So, and then once that's all good to go, I'm gonna disconnect this, drill the right hole, put the camera in, and then run the wire appropriately. Okay, so I drilled my hole, and I used this piece of tape to try and prevent any sort of cracking or my drill bit moving around, but I think it should be good. You can use this grate to center it, otherwise you can measure across the entire front. And so now you thread the cable through there, and then this has this thread, you know, you're just gonna push that up through the hole and tighten down the bolt. There's also this little piece of like foam or like protection you can put on there, as well as some inserts if you want a specific angle, but I'm purposefully not doing that. So I just have this little piece of foam.
Got my front camera mounted right there. So, and then I ran my wiring accordingly. And just to prove it to you all, here's my front camera. These are the two little knobs on my bumper. This is the bull bar on top. I wanted it to be able to look more at the ground than like straight ahead, because it's more for seeing rocks and obstacles driving forward. Okay, so with the final front camera check, we're gonna just pull this out one last time, and I'm gonna run you through everything wiring wise for the harness. Right here, this is the harness we just connected for the front camera. You're gonna connect your yellow to yellow and then your red power trigger cable for your front camera to this yellow front camera power cable. That's an important one. There's another harness that has two yellows, a white and a red. The yellow is for your rear camera, and then there's a video in as well that's auxiliary, and then there's a white and a red. This is for your line in plug on the front stock location. So all three of these outputs come from your large wiring harness that's got like this thing and all these white plugs. These three cables come out of that huge wiring harness and they plug into this extra adapter that comes with the kit. You're not going to use this auxiliary video in. Like I said before, you're also going to use this adapter cable so that you can plug in this USB port. This sends some vehicle information like whether your doors are open and some other stuff. These two wires, I'm not really sure what they are, but they might actually be really helpful. I'm wondering if key 1 and key 2 means that basically these are trigger cables if you turn your key on. Depending upon if there's anything you want to have running, like maybe this would run a daytime running light or things like that, these might be really helpful. I'm not quite sure, and I've got my daytime running lights all set up, so I'm not going to worry about them right now, but it's good to know about these for the future. Another thing I want to point out is there's this brown wire that says CHR, and then there's another one that says CHR. I'm not quite sure what this stands for, but I will say that when I plugged these together, I had all sorts of issues with the rear view camera and other things, so make sure that you don't plug these in if you have a rear view camera. It might just cause other electrical issues too, I'm not sure. I'm definitely leaving those disconnected. And then the second cam vehicle in harness that's like completely empty, you just leave all this laid. Don't use this yellow plug. Use the other yellow plug on the large harness that is connected to actually one of the physical white plugs back here. This USB cable, this extra 2 yellow and white and red adapter, and then you're gonna have this huge mess adapter just so that you can plug in the front camera, but it is what it is. At least I guess it'll be there in case you want to put a subwoofer or something in your vehicle. So that basically sums up all of the wiring. And if you have any other questions about the wiring, comment down below because maybe I can help you with them. But there's not a ton of documentation on what to do with specific wires. So I would probably follow what I've said unless you know of a better way to do it. All right, so now that we've got all of that wired up, I'm gonna push this back into the dash and then start closing everything up. So I just wanna show something that you may need to update if you can't get your Apple CarPlay to work. So you go to settings and then scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says system. And then this right here is called the MCU update. So my MCU version was out of date, and there's a download that I'm gonna put in the description that you may need to download. And then once you download it, it's a zipped file. You have to unzip it so it's in the correct format, which is I think like a dmcu.image or something. But once you unzip the file, it's listed right there. Make sure you pull that out of the folder and just have it as a file on the USB jump drive, because then what you'll do is you'll just plug that into your USB port here and then click MCU update, and it will automatically look for the file in your USB stick, and it'll take that file and then update your head unit's MCU software. And then from there, the CarPlay worked flawlessly for me. So if you're having issues with it and you feel like you've set everything up, that may be your issue. And putting all of this back together, it's gonna go back in the exact same way that we took everything out. The one caveat is you do have to push those mounting brackets in ever so slightly, like how we saw when we assembled the head unit, that it kind of pushed out a little bit. You're gonna wanna push those in, thread all of your bolts loosely, and then tighten them all down once they're all threaded. Make sure to plug this clip back in for the rear window and the heated seats if you have them. And pop this back into place. All right, that is all good to go. Now we can just take our knobs here, turn these back on. So that's gonna wrap up the whole entire install video. If you really enjoyed it or it brought you some sort of value or helped you install your head unit, give it a like because that helps everyone know that this was a helpful video. And if you want to get this product, I'm gonna have it linked down below. Depending upon the time you're seeing this video, there should be a discount on that product. And I've also got a file link down below, so if you need to upgrade the MCU file in your head unit so that you've got the most up-to-date CarPlay, then that will be down there as well. It's a pretty simple process. So thank you so much for watching. And if you really made it through the entire video, thank you so much for watching. I know it's a really long video, but I hope it was helpful. So with that being said, I'll catch you guys all in the next video.